guys are good.
We're good?
Yep.
Hi, everyone. Just give me one more second here. I forgot to set up the mic. And as people join in, I am joined today by none other than Sycra.
Hello.
And today we're going to be doing the topic of female villains. So it's kind of funny that we did this during the Halloween streams, and we did a female witch. So it's going to be, I assume, somewhat similar, but I'm going to try to do something a little different today with my female villain. But the main reason for today is to mainly ask questions, and they don't even have to pertain to what we're working on. They can be any questions about digital art in general, or how to get a job, or things that we've learned from our experiences, or anything specific for Sycra, especially since we have them on the stream today. So I'm going to finish up posting the marketing, and then we will get started as people are coming in. And Joe is our moderator. We're actually in the same room for once. I'm in Chicago right now for a CG Cookie kind of retreat this week, so we have everyone else in the other room. There's about total, I think there's 12, but as of right now I think we have like 9 or something, so we had to move to the back room. So if you hear noises in the background, just know it's other cookie employees baking cookies, of course. Let's see here. Okay, Facebook, Twitter. I think we're good. Hey. Alright. Hi everyone, I'm Tim Von Rieden. Sorry we have to do another intro. And I'm joined today by Sycra.
Hello.
And Sycra is a YouTube tutorial author who's pretty prominent, and I have to admit, your work recently, Sycra, I feel like it's its own like story. I feel like it's its own show. Like it should be made into an anime or something. Like not only is your style distinctive enough, but I feel like in your latest character pieces, I can feel a story behind it now.
Aw, that's nice. Thanks.
I don't know where you're going with it, but I really think you should develop something with it.
Well, maybe one day I will.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. And I appreciate that people are responding positively to it.
Yeah, I like how angular it all is. Like I know when I think it was the last stream we were talking about finding style, but I definitely think you definitely found your style. And I like that you're kind of running with it too right now.
Yeah. It's something that I think when you're a kid, you kind of wish for something in your head. You have this idea of what you want to be as an artist. And for me, I grew up watching anime and playing RPGs, mostly Japanese RPGs, and I would read comic books, and it's like I wanted to do that. And when I finally got around to doing art, the only people I could find who were teaching taught realism and how to draw from life and how to draw from photos, and so I kind of went down that road as well, and figuring I need to learn how to draw from reality. And 10 years down the road, it's like, okay, sure, I can paint, but I'm not doing the stuff I liked when I was a kid. I am not the person I wanted to be, so when I looked through my gallery, I wasn't interested. And now it's finally getting to the point that I'm not there yet, but it's like, no, that's kind of what I wish I would have been. Even though it's like, 20 years later.
Yeah. No, I definitely like where you're going with it right now. But just to give people kind of an intro, I'm going to share my screen now. We are going to be doing female villains. If you're just joining us, we're doing female villains. So if you guys have any ideas or something that, any suggestions as you see us kind of continue on our work, feel free to ask. But Joe is kind of being the one today that will moderate and push the questions at us. So while we're drawing Sycra, he'll be the one kind of sending us questions, and he'll say who they're for, or if it's for both, or specifically one person. So yeah.
Alright, we got some questions already lined up.
Alright, let's hear him.
Samuel Dobbins asks, question about pricing your work as artists and doing commissions. I still don't make enough to live on, hoping you could tell me what would be a fair price for my work. And they link to their work, but I think you guys should talk about maybe like how you guys go about maybe pricing your work for commissions.
Alright. Well, I remember, remember when we talked about when I was underpricing myself, and that's actually a bad thing for the art community?
Yeah.
So I definitely think to answer this question, I don't think you should undersell yourself as an artist, but I think you need to be self-aware on like what is your skill level and be realistic about it, and what is a realistic amount for what you should be charging. Because it is true, if you are underselling yourself, you're also hurting other artists that are trying to make it with their own commission work. Because how do you feel about that, Sycra?
Yeah, I think it's kind of hard. I've just been treating it like, and the hardest part is the beginning. I'd say finding what that initial payment is, and um, I think when I started, I was doing like $10 an hour type jobs, and then from there, it just went. It gradually increased, but um, I guess there's a point where you get contacted by other people, and they sort of define what you're worth in that what they're willing to pay you. I guess that happened to me anyway. Well, you might want this amount, but they'll if you suggest a too high amount, they just will flat out refuse it, unless you're good enough to warrant it, and you get a sense of your industry and what they're charging. So right now, my rate is different than it was before, but I don't know.
I hope
I think.
so.
Well, yeah.
So it should like keep going up.
Yeah, it just goes up. But it definitely was the hardest right in the beginning, because afterwards you get a sense of, okay, I got paid this much for this job, and it took me this many hours. And as you do more, you get a sense of, okay, well, this time the quality is going up, or I'm getting more clients, so I can increase my pay, or I'm getting, maybe it's too high, and then you adjust it. But when you have something to go from, it's a lot easier than when you have nothing.
Agreed. Yeah.
Lynn S says, "Hello from the Netherlands."
Hello. From Chicago.
Hello from Bucharest.
Yeah, where are you right now, Sycra?
I'm in Romania.
Are you really still?
Yeah,
I thought that was
I'll be
temporary.
here. No, I'm gonna be here for a while.
Oh,
Few
okay.
years, maybe a few years.
How is it out there?
Um, it's different.
Like gorgeous surroundings?
Yes and no. Like, they have gorgeous architecture, but it's not really kept very well. So
Oh, okay.
some places are really nice, though. Yeah, I would say it's a mixed bag, because there's a lot of more poverty, I suppose, but there's also these really old buildings that are beautiful, and the weather can be quite nice. So it's good. I'd say it's
Okay.
good. It's a mixed bag. It's very different than where I was from. That's for sure.
You miss anything about the States, or even up north?
Vancouver, yeah, a lot.
Yeah.
A lot. Um, I don't know. I think it's cool for an adventure anyway,
Yeah.
and it's letting me appreciate a lot of stuff, because I'm dealing a lot with the government, and when you have to deal with bureaucracy, it's always pretty lame. But when you have to deal with a corrupt bureaucracy, it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I have no idea what that would be like.
You got to learn how to bribe.
Hmm.
Bribes make the world go round.
Chris Pearson asks, "What do you use live streaming software-wise? Is this all done through Hangouts?"
Yeah. I think eventually Concept Cookie is going to be moving to Twitch, and I think that's almost for sure. We already have an editor doing some like video intro stuff, and we'll probably do that in March. So I'll keep reminding everyone on when we do the switch to make sure it's not like oh, by the way, we're doing it today. We're going to Twitch. I'll give you guys enough of a reminder to make sure you guys know. And Joe, if you want to shoot him off, I keep seeing him come in.
All right. Someone says hello from Canada.
Well, hello.
here's a popular upvoted one. Is there any way for someone to become a cookie employee, even in format that isn't necessarily even artistic like what you do?
And someone, I can't tell if that was an insult or not. Even if the format isn't necessarily even artistic like what you do. I guess my format isn't really artistic. No, I don't think that's what the
No.
question meant, but that's just how it heard in my head. Is there any way? Yeah. I mean, currently we are kind of working on a secret project that I'm not allowed to say what it is yet, but we've been hiring some people here and there to do some work. So I can't really say much more, but yeah, there's definitely possibilities to become a CG Cookie employee.
I think what they meant was like, if they're not artistically inclined, can they work?
Oh, I know. No, I know.
I was like,
When I first read it, I was like, ouch. Shots fired.
Dante, hey Tim, hey Sycra, finally made it to a live session. Hope this is where I can ask questions. At which point should a beginner artist move away from studies and look at starting to try and create original art?
That's a good question. What do you think, Sycra?
I kind of think you should be doing that all the time. Like, never forsake the imagination side of it. Just because you start to forget what the point was, and I've seen this happen to so many people. I think we called it study sickness, where you just because there's this kind of fulfillment when you finish a study, especially when it looks pretty good when you've used like photo reference and stuff. And you can get hooked to that, and then you might do imagination stuff once in a while, and it doesn't compare to it, right? Because well, the study you had reference, so you got your values right, you got all these things right, and then you do your stuff from imagination, and it's a letdown. It's like, why do I suck so much? And there's almost this fear to rely on reference even more. Whereas I think I treat it the other way around, where I spend most of my time now doing stuff from imagination with a little bit of reference whenever I'm really unsure. Um, and I'll try and break through things and figure them out without the reference if possible, because I found when I do that, my visual understanding is getting better, not just my memory, but like I can solve problems on the fly. So I would encourage you, especially in the beginning, use reference, it's important, and do studies, but also make sure you're always doing something for yourself, so you're not only doing studies, because, yeah, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I couldn't have said it better. I fully agree with that. Because you're right, like, you can do studies all day, but like if you want to show someone your work, if you all you see is just studies, it almost makes me think like, well, okay, this is great, but like, what is something that's specifically uniquely you? Like, give me something that reads as your work and something that I can recognize that you're passionate about.
Yeah.
Actually, kind of hit on that earlier when we were talking about like drawing just what you see and not really understanding that aspect as well, like understanding how to see through an object or how reflections work.
Yeah.
I mean, you could do a study and not understand that, but still make the study look really good.
Yeah. I think I did this for the longest time. Like, I didn't really understand as much as I could. I just got really good at copying stuff.
Yeah,
Mhm. I kind of feel in the same boat as that.
the copy machine.
Yeah.
Yeah. And take away the reference, and then it's like, oh, I don't know how to do anything.
Andrew McKinney, out of curiosity, are either of you using reference right now? Realistic, other people's work, your own, or are these designs completely off the top of your heads?
For mine, it's off the top of my head. I think you could probably notice by how much I'm struggling. And I haven't
Also,
painted in a while, so.
actually, you're not doing a witch, are you?
I'm not doing a witch. I can change it. If it's looking too witchy, I'll change it.
No, 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 I'm just joking. No, mine's from the top of my head, but like I'm using my own work as my reference right now, which you guys can't see because it's on the other screen. But
I flipped it.
what?
They can see it now.
Oh, gotcha. No, no, I mean like the reference that I'm using.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, I think it's good though to do both from time to time. Are you able to switch them?
No, not yours. Oh, yeah.
All right, you do that then.
Okay. Next question. Hi, I follow your videos on YouTube and finally have a chance to catch your live streams. What art sites do you suggest to put my art on so I can get work? And what programs do you use to record your videos? Keep up the awesome work.
I think that's you.
Me?
Yeah.
I use Camtasia. I don't know. Maybe it's you. It
I
sounded
use
like you to
Camtasia as
me.
well.
Okay. Well, same answer then.
Yeah. Camtasia is
Um,
great. I like it.
for art sites, I don't really know. I'm not too hip, but I use DeviantArt, but I don't know if that's still like popular or because I know Tumblr's really big, and what's the other one? Instagram.
I was just about to ask, do you have an Instagram?
I don't. I think I do in terms of an account, but I don't think I do. Like I haven't used it, but I think I signed up for it.
Okay. I just found out the other day, I felt really old because I found out Instagram is bigger than Twitter for the new generation.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
I was just getting on board of like accepting Twitter was bigger than Facebook. I
yeah.
was like, oh great, now I have to jump ship again.
Mhm.
The as far as sites go, as like for getting work, I think conceptart.org is a big one, right? For like actual work. And
It was. I don't
Didn't
know
say it
how it is
was.
now.
yeah, I don't know what it's like now. Most people do ArtStation and DrawCrowd too, right?
Well, it's weird. I feel like even though DeviantArt used to get made fun of in back in the day, I feel like now it's actually be like the hub for digital artists right now. Until like what are the two new ones? ArtStation and
DrawCrowd.
DrawCrowd. Until those like pick up steam, I kind of think DeviantArt is the go-to place right now.
They made a big update, right? Like DeviantArt changed its logo and they made it a mobile app, so I think it's gonna be good for them.
Mhm. Yeah, I've never really had a problem with DeviantArt. It's like, yeah, I know that like they accept anything and everything, but that's what kind of makes it neat. And then you can still see like the really good art if you toggle the what is the filter? It's like what's hot, I think, on the front page, and that still has really good work.
Hey Sycra, how do you create your backgrounds? I have problems creating backgrounds that match my characters.
Me too. I don't know. I don't like my backgrounds are really simple. If you look at my recent stuff, um, I think you should ask Tim because he creates gorgeous graphic designy stuff.
You're joking for environments?
For environments, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if he means backgrounds for like characters, because really I don't do environments. Um, I don't think I've done an environment in years. So,
I guess here, hold on. I'll show you what I've been working on for like the last 8 months on and off because this is how much I struggle with background art. Alright, so if, I don't even know if you guys can see this clearly. Hold on, let me. Alright, so this I've been working on and off forever because I cannot for the life of me figure out a background. I've gone through this stage with it where it was like my first one and then I wasn't satisfied with it because I felt like it was too bland and I didn't want to be that artist that makes um, background work that really isn't as interesting as their character work because they're just not as skilled in it. So then I tried to do something more dynamic and I was like, okay, I can kind of see the direction I'm going with. But then in the end, I decided, well, we're just going to start over, do a simple backdrop, and then kind of build it up from there. So I do think it is a struggle, especially it can be frustrating when you feel like you're more confident as a character artist. And people always wonder, well, can't you just jump into environments? Well, it's like, no, it's kind of a different mindset and it's a different way of handling the subject matter that is different than with characters. Because I feel pretty confident in doing characters, but when it comes to environments, it's not the same level of confidence that I go in with.
Next question is from Dante. This may sound like a silly question, but does studying value really teach about color? Sometimes I feel like it's impossible for me to be able to separate values from color image by eye.
Mm, I think it does.
I think it does too. I will say though, um, values. I think you have to have not only value. I think you have to really look at the three aspects of what makes a color, which is the value, saturation, and hue. So like if you can understand the different hues, so like the literally just the color of it, I mean that's great because then you can decipher the difference between like a warm green and a cool green. But for value, I mean, I feel like it goes hand in hand with saturation, where if you can get a good grasp on when is a good time to use a specific value on a specific area on your subject matter versus an area that you want more dull or something that you don't want to be the area of focus, then it's good to have an understanding. But I think it's best to have the understanding of all three, not just the hue or value.
Someone asked, Sycra, what color picker are you using?
I'm using Cooler's color picker.
Yeah, Coolers too. That's an awesome uh, color picker, right? It's got like a bunch of like filter options and stuff.
Yeah, there's a few of them. I really like this one. I think the other ones are fine too. There's Magic Picker and um, there's a Len White color wheel, which is nice too. So I think that one's free.
The uh, the sliders, when I first started using Coolers, someone didn't have to show me that like you can actually divide those sections up into like 10 by 10%.
Yeah,
I didn't
yeah,
realize. It's so cool.
yeah. I really like it. It's much easier to understand color for me with it than without it.
Diana asks, "Hey Sakura, I have trouble properly learning male anatomy. I don't know why, but female is just easier for me. And I was wondering if you had any tips, tricks, books to recommend for males, because I know what Tim has said about it. Wondering about you though."
What does Tim said about
So, um, how it's more rigid, where females are more smooth and curvy, guys are more like rigid, and you have to look at. I mean, the main differences I would say are like the hip, the torso, and the definition of muscle in the underlying anatomy. But those are my big things.
it? Yeah, probably the same thing. I don't think I would say much different. What I would do is practice doing stick figures, really small um, figures, maybe this big, right? So, okay, let's say this is a stick figure, right? Yay, stick figure. It's really basic. Okay, try and make ones that look male and that look female. So, I would make the shoulders wider for men. I give more of a V taper, and this is going to be more like a heroic male, and then sort of more this shape. And then for females, I go the other way, where it's wider on the bottom, a little smaller, and this shape. And then the lines, I guess you would be more delicate with the female forms than the men. You'd be more, as Tim said, rigid. But it's also because I have a very sharp style, so I don't get the opportunity to be as rigid or because it's sharp no matter what. So I tend to simplify females a lot more. I won't put so much detail on faces and things like that.
Yeah.
Kyle Happy asks, "What advice would both of you give for your 2010 selves?"
Draw more. It's all about drawing. Stop playing with painting. Draw more.
I think point. What was I doing? Oh, that was okay. I was a senior in college. Um, I would say trust yourself. Don't rely on line art, and start with strong foundations.
Becky Ward says, hello!
Oh,
If one is finding themselves in an artistic rut, what are your suggestions for getting out of that rut and being able to be creative again?
what do you think?
Mhm. I don't know. How often is this person drawing or producing? Because there's this thing about sometimes we get in blocks because we're holding too much expectation on ourselves. And for me, the solution is to not have that expectation and to just keep doing stuff over and over and over again, like drawing all the time. And then when I have a rut, it doesn't really matter as much because I'm gonna draw tomorrow anyway. So it's usually better the next day, but I don't know. I'm sorry, I feel that's a bad answer.
Oh, that's honest. I think that people get in artistic ruts because they're, well, one, you might just be having an off day. Like that happens to everyone, but you gotta just trust that it's not going to be forever. I've never had it happen to me more than one day in a row. It's always been like the next morning, I always, for whatever reason, I feel much better. If that, like the night before, I just was not blending well or something was not right, I'd always go to bed thinking, okay, well, tomorrow will be better. And I've always trusted it, and it always seems to work. But if you're in art rut, then I think you need to get inspired, go find something and draw maybe something out of your comfort zone, because then you seem to care less about the outcome when it's something that you don't feel as you're as attached to. So like if I was given the assignment to like draw what's kind of out of my comfort, like a horror, super crazy, bloody villains, whatever it might be, I think I would have more fun with that, and the expectation of what I need to produce would be lower, so I could have more fun with it, and then you might get out of that rut because I think it just comes down to you just need to keep drawing and stop overthinking it, really.
Lynn S. asks, hey guys, just out of curiosity, did you ever deal with art theft?
I haven't personally.
What?
I haven't yet.
Really?
Yeah, I'm not that good yet.
Oh, it's
maybe,
like,
maybe,
come
maybe someday. It's kind of like trolls. I'm waiting for more trolls because it feels like that's when you know you've made it.
on. Yeah, I've definitely had to deal with art theft. I was showing, wasn't it you and Nate last
Yeah.
night, Joe? Just people, well, just because of with Const Cookie and CG Cookie, like our stuff is stolen to be torrented all the time. So I guess this is
Oh,
something that
that. Well, yeah, yeah, that I've dealt with.
yeah, so like that I've definitely had to deal a lot with. But it's one of those things where it's like I just, as a company, we don't have the time and effort to chase down every individual, and it's not really worth it. Where we almost just have to see it as free advertising, which I mean, take it as how it is. I mean, you can either be like, well, that kind of sucks, or move on and just create more content for them to steal, and just be proud of the people that do pay for it still.
I was gonna say, I think I battle it by putting my signature. I hide my signature everywhere in my paintings.
What?
I hide my signature. So like, uh, say like a marking on the metal, like if I'm doing metal work and there's like a scratch in the middle, what I do is I do my quick check mark signature. So that way, it's like people are like, oh, I did this. And I'm like, really? Then this mark is like my signature. I don't know if you can
Mhm.
replicate this. Chicago Storm 88 asks, hey Tim, are you still watching Face Off? Have you created any sketches based off their challenges? I always loved that show and found it inspiring if you ever got caught in a block.
You know what? I don't have my sketchbook on me right now, but I have watched every episode except for you last night because I'm in Chicago. But yeah, I am caught up with the newest season, and don't spoil it for me because I know this week, and I think this is the coolest challenge that they've gotten in a while, where the challenge is to do, like, they're given the red queen or the black jack, and they have to create a humanoid version of that with that as their theme, and I think that's super cool. I'm really excited to watch that episode. So that's another good example of like something that uh, you can get inspired from and have your sketchbook open when you're watching it, and then whatever the challenge is, you try to do it as well, and then just kind of see where your mind takes you and be like, okay, if I was given the black king ace or whatever it is, you have to incorporate like the shapes of the ace, or actually I would rather be do like a spade or a club, and somehow incorporate that into your character and have that kind of match the theme. And sometimes when you're given an assignment like that where it's so out of the box, you're able to think more clearly, more freely, really. And with that freedom, I think you'll find you'll like what you create better.
Andrew asks, I've noticed that when you start out with your designs, Tim, you tend to start with a white or very light gray backdrop, whereas Sycra, you seem to favor dark grays. Why do each of you pick those shades, or what about it tends to work better for you?
I would say actually normally I do work on darker canvases. I think it's even best to work on like a mid-tone gray, for at least for the work that I do. But for this one, since it's more cartoony and animated, I like to work with more vibrant colors. And I think just having a blank white is more like sketchbooky for me, where I can kind of get into it. But I would say white is usually more intimidating, and I don't recommend that. What about you, Sycra?
Well, I've been doing a lot more traditional work, so this is my first time painting in a little while. And so I started with a dark gray because it's a villain, right? So I figured, okay, dark. And then whether it's dark gray or light gray or middle gray, I tend to pick the first pencil color not far from the background color, so it doesn't feel as intimidating. The lines don't feel as permanent than, or compared to like a white with a black, because white's the lightest you can go, black's the darkest you can go. There's a lot of contrast in that. Whereas if I was using white, I might use like a light gray to draw with. If I'm using a dark background, I might use a black. So that there's not that much contrast. It just feels easier somehow.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, you two. I'm struggling constructing the form around the line of action. The energy flow I find hard to build around without attaching it to surface forms for context. And it doesn't always pass through. Some angles it's easy, but not always. Tips? That last part was kind of.
Oh my gosh, that one was so long. It's hard for me to keep up with that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of zoned out. It's about figure drawing, or
I think it's about trying to draw the form around the line of action and still maintaining uh, the flow of the objects.
um, hmm.
It's like creating an energy. I think it's just good to keep your hand loose, and while you're doing it, don't be so like tight with your gestures, especially when you're starting off like doing. Even if you're doing like silhouettes, it's bad if you're keeping it very tight. Like keep it more loose and just know like when you're starting off, it's not supposed to look perfectly clean and constructed. It's supposed to be more gestural and loose.
Vladimir asks, do you use books when you learn anatomy? And if yes, who were the authors?
I used a few books. I started out with Loomis, and I really recommend Loomis's books. And then I studied some Bridgman. And the thing that Bridgman gives is more blocky forms, like how I think different artists all give like one or two pieces of good information that you can grab onto and use. So Bridgman for structure, Loomis for the basic proportions, and then um, I mean, honestly, right now, if I was starting, I probably wouldn't use books. There are so many better tutorials online where I could see, like Glenn Vilppu has drawing series where he covers anatomy, and Proco's been doing really good anatomy work recently. So
Yeah. The one thing that I really liked about, I think that stuck with me with Bridgman was how he talked about columns and how they tend to actually mimic the form of the human face or even body parts. I don't know if you remember that, but that was
yeah,
something
like
that stuck.
he treats the body like a machine,
Yeah.
like mechanically. It's really cool.
Hmm. The one anatomy book that I feel like I recommend every single time is by his last name is Savardi, and he has this one where it's drawing the human form. And the reason I liked it so much is because the subject matter he uses is not like a bodybuilder. It's not very tight. It's not like super big superhero proportions. It was like a very average looking lean male, and the way that he drew like the veins in the arms, it felt more authentic to me, and that's why I really liked that book because I felt like it was something outside of what was expected of anatomy.
Yeah, it's Giovanni, right? Giovanni
Giovanni
Savardi.
Savadi.
Uh, and then I highly recommend Michael Hampton. Those are fantastic anatomy books because that's how he takes a lot of the simple forms in three-dimensional and just like goes into a pretty good detail of how to make those 3D forms actually part of the anatomy and how they overlap and whatnot. Sycra, where do you get your ideas on colors? How does it fit the characters you make?
Um, well, it used to be that I would just start with, because I had an oil painting background, so an underlayer, which was like a burnt sienna type color, like brown, and then I would move into whatever from there. Now it's more just whatever feels right. So, okay, I'm doing a villain. Well, immediately I start thinking of things like darker colors, reds, maybe dark purples and greens and um, blues. Like I could go the ice route of like dead in terms of blue, purple, white, and then maybe supplement that with hits of red or orange. Or I could go like green and more sickly, and then I would focus on more sickly colors. In this case, I thought, okay, what if I go almost warm and do something in the more yellows and oranges just as contrast? Uh, and then from there, okay, whatever, I'll decide as I go, and then I start incorporating greens. So now I've got like a warm green yellow palette, which it's kind of evil, but not really. And I kind of like I'm always trying to experiment. I think that's the fastest way to learn about colors. Just try it, because especially if you're using digital, nothing's going to happen if you screw up. Whereas if you use traditional, you might have just wasted like $100 in oil paints.
There's definitely a big difference there.
That's a good question because this is something that I'm struggling with right now. Hey guys, do you have any advice on how to be consistent with art style? I understand that our styles change as we experiment with it, but I'd like to be consistent as well.
What do you think, Sycra? Maybe like whenever we get these answers, you go first. Type deal.
All right, all right.
Putting you on the spot.
Well, for me, I think it's a matter of first you have to know what you like. That's really important. If you don't know what you like, then you won't know when you found it. So for me, it was like the pointy things. I do like all these pointy characters, and they've all got like pointy features and stuff. But that was a while to actually understand that, to look at the things that I liked and to realize like, I kind of like these shapes, these triangle shapes. I seem to want to go towards that. Um, and I would look at rounder things and I'd be like, that's cool, I like that. But then I would look at pointy things and be like, that's cool, I wish my work looked like that. And then once you know who you are, it's more about setting rules and not straying too far out. So I had a period of more experimentation, and now I would say it's the opposite. It's about setting rules and limitations, and within those limitations, coming up with solutions. Like, how do you make, okay, you really like sharp things, you really like pointy things. Here's a baby. How do you make a baby and have all this chubby fat and make that pointy and sharp, but still look chubby and fat? And it's something to work on, and I figured out how to do that. So it's like, cool. So limitation, I would say.
That's exactly what I would say. That was perfect. Because you're right. I think you have to find out what you like. And until that point, I feel like it's just a lot of experimenting.
I think one thing that I'm struggling with right now is just like I've studied from so many different artists, tried to pull from their styles that I'm oftentimes confused when I'm trying to do like a front view to a side view, because I can do front view anime, but then when I go to side view, my brain for some reason goes to like Western Marvel comics. And I'm trying to like merge the two together.
I don't know, it's kind of. Have you done the turnarounds where you draw like a front view and then you draw a side view and then you do a three-quarter view and you have those lines going across?
Yeah, I don't do those a lot, but I mean I should start doing those more often
I think those really help to translate one thing to another. It's like, okay, this is
for consistency.
yeah.
Libra Gray. Hello, hello. Where would be a good place to start for connecting with other artists? For example, Sycra, how did you meet? It's spelled M-E-A-T. Bob. I I understand an important part of pursuing art is making connections, but it's hard when you don't know where to start.
Yeah, I met Bob in animation school, so I don't know. Uh, I guess the other place I meet people is forums, and I used to be part of conceptart.org, or not part of, but I submitted sketchbooks and stuff. And I think it's not that hard. There's just tricks to doing it. So, for instance, let's say you go to a forum and you're new and it's intimidating. What I always tell people is make a new thread and post something every single day. And every time you post something, on 3 other people's threads, leave a comment. Like, look at their work, see if you have anything insightful to offer or encouraging, or like, hey, that's really cool. So for every one thing you do, you post 3 things. And then if anyone happens to reply to yours, and chances are, if you're active on other people's things, 1 or 2 people might reply on your thing. Maybe it'll take a week and no one's replying to your stuff, but you're consistent, and then they'll reply to you. If anyone replies to you, always reply back to them. Like, look at their sketchbook, see their stuff, and reply back. And then I think in 2 weeks, that's all it takes before you will have like a community. And if you keep up with that, and you foster it, and you talk to these people more, it's not that hard. Or at least it wasn't when I was around. Starting to find people and meet people. But I'm not sure now what the environment's like. Do you guys have any other opinions?
Yeah.
I think I got rid of the question. Let me throw it back up there. My question is, this is for Sycra. How did you and Cynics meet?
Well, I've been following Cynics for so many years. I think I saw his work either on concept art or maybe Seigen forums, and he was just like this guy who did really cool work. And then I don't remember how, but some people were saying you should interview him, and I'm always really nervous when people say you should interview someone because I feel like these people are so great, why would they want to talk to me? So I just asked him, hey, do you want to do an interview? And he's like, sure. And we did an interview, and it was good, but my Camtasia crashed. So I lost the entire thing, and so I had to do the next day. And he was really cool about it. He was very like, oh, that's no problem. So,
Oh, that's kind of that's a good thing then in a weird way, because then it forced you guys to talk again.
yeah, he was really nice. And then we started like we had this thing where we decided, no, wouldn't it be funny if we pretend like we don't like each other?
Is that how that started?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that's a great idea. We should totally do that.
That's pretty funny.
It's so awkward sometimes when I watch those streams, and I'm like, are they fighting for real? Like, are they really mad at each other?
No. I don't know, because we do kind of have this carry on into our normal thing with like sarcasm, but we genuinely like each other. I hope he likes me. I like him.
Hopefully he watches this and is like, oh, Sycra.
No, he's likely going to say, even if he watches it, he's like, what? I didn't watch that. I don't watch your stupid streams. But it gets to the point where you're like, oh, so it's the way he is.
Alright, back to questions.
And question. And I feel bad because I can tell when you're like reading the questions and then there's like dead silent. I'm like, okay.
Play me off, Johnny.
Right? Have you almost seen like some kind of background music going at all times so that whenever in between questions, it's not just like me and Sycra just painting and dead silent.
Elevator music.
I mean, I guess we could make our own.
Hey Sycra, really excited watching the style exploration you're undertaking right now. I'm struggling with seeing progress in my art. Do you think drawing portraits again and again will finally give the results I'm looking for? How long will it take you?
Well, if you want to do portrait painting, then yeah, do portraits. But it's a matter of what you want to do. I don't know how long, because it's taken me many, many years. I'm older than most of my audience, so it's difficult to just say like, well, it's going to be quick because it wasn't for me. But at the same time, I don't know, because so much of when I was starting out, I was just completely lost, and I think it might take 3-4 years now if I was to restart from scratch. If I was a complete beginner, but I had access to all the knowledge that's available now, I would be doing a lot more drawing. And what I would tell myself is do not focus on results. Just get your mileage up first, and keep drawing as much as possible. Because a lot of times in the beginning, people have ideas of cool paintings, cool drawings, cool things they want to do, big aspirations. I want a cool style. And let's say I started my style thing even 8 years ago. I wouldn't have been able to handle it. I wouldn't have the anatomy knowledge. I wouldn't have... I think for me it was very important to learn a bunch of stuff first and then work on style right at the end. But I've seen people do it the other way around. They're successful. So.
I think your way is the better way to do it. Is like really learn a solid foundation first, and then kind of refine it to your taste and what you like.
Yeah.
What's the quote where you were talking about? It's like done is better than perfect. Where it's like, don't focus on how great it is, just actually do it. Too many artists, I think, are talking to me about like wanting to be better and wanting to produce awesome results, but they don't draw that often. Like they don't even draw every day. And it's like, okay, that's the first step that I want you to take, and then we'll continue working with your skill level, because you got to build upon it. You can't just. It's not like an elevator. It's like a staircase. You have to take one step at a time.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a combination of these two things. One, it's like it's not impossible, but it takes way longer than you want it to take. But when you're doing it, it sort of happens. I don't want to say faster than you expect, but there's times where I'll say things like to myself like it's going to take me another year before I figure this out, and then 2 weeks later I figure it out. So it's not all doom and gloom, but it's also really, I don't know, you gotta commit. What are you willing to sacrifice? I always ask people that.
Oof, that's a good one. A lot of time, that's for
Yeah.
sure.
I was about to say time.
Time's probably the number one I can think of.
Yeah.
Even like some of your social stuff.
Oh yeah.
People ask me all the time, how do you like manage both? And I would answer like, yeah, I might see friends on the weekend, but really during the week, I'm kind of a recluse. I'm just drawing at nights. Like that's my fun. Like usually Friday nights, a good Friday night for me is like staying home and drawing and maybe talking with other artists on Skype or something. That's
It
my
gets
good
kind of
time.
crazy how, like, art just the more I do it, the more it envelops everything, until it's like the people I talk to are artists. Pretty much all I do is art. It's art, art, art. Maybe
Right.
at some point I'm gonna balance it out with life again, but
Do you ever feel like you lost a lot of friends because they weren't artists? Not because like it was like you had a falling out or anything. It just you don't talk to them as much, and then you eventually don't see them very much, and then they just become like a friend that you used to have, but now, because that's how I feel, or that like all my good friends are artists.
yeah. There's something else that happens, which is I start to feel guilty when I'm around. I don't want to say normal people, but people with like a 9 to 5 job, because they're talking about their jobs and they're like, "Well, what do you do?" And after they say how miserable their job was, it's like, yeah, I don't know. I don't really want to say it. I feel like guilty to say like I draw. My life's not that bad. It's kind
Isn't
of
that
cool,
a really
actually.
awkward thing to be like, I actually love what I do?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
We were talking about it last night in the office about like construction workers and like those guys go outside in the freezing cold and they're building stuff all day. It's like I would much rather be behind a computer drawing all day than out there freezing my butt off.
I'm so respectful for those who do the hard labor outside, because then otherwise I wouldn't have a desk inside of a building to have.
Yeah.
Like, thank you, physical manual laborers.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think it just gets really hard to relate to people who, or it gets harder to relate to people who aren't drawing and who don't have these worlds in their heads.
Mhm.
Did we? Oh, yeah.
Like anytime you're reading, I'm just gonna hear that in the corner.
Um, sometimes we see in finished illustration strokes that are not so detailed, although seeing it as a whole, it seems perfect. Single quick strokes highlights as a highlight surface. When trying to do this, it gets messy. Brush technique. Any advice?
And you
I'm
guys are
really
throwing out like
confused about
long
that.
questions. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm glad they're more like specific and not whatever, but hold on, I'm gonna have to read that one again.
Well, I think I can throw my interpretation of it. I think they're talking about how like painterly something looks, and how it's like someone just throws down a stroke, and it's like this is somebody's nose, you know?
Oh, okay. So like, what would that be called? There's like a reasoning behind the stroke. It's very impressionistic. It's like implying form, but like the artist that's doing it, like especially with like Dave Raposa stuff, or even I'm trying to think of an artist that keeps it so loose. Um, can't think of any off the top of my head, but like the when they do their brushstrokes, they know or they understand like if I do this specific brushstroke here, it's going to give the impression of a shadow. And if you do it on the face, like in the middle, if you do it right and you give it the right brushstroke, it's going to look like a nose shadow, and it's implied that there's a nose above it. So that just comes with like time and learning, like just values and placement, I would say. So that comes with time and practice.
I forgot. I was watching, or I think I was looking at somebody's, and they were talking about if you could make a nose from 4 brushstrokes, then it's like you kind of understand on like on a sketch level that you can just really quickly like take 2 seconds to draw a nose. I forget who that was though. I'll have to look that up. Oh, this is a good question. What's the worst excuse or lie you've been told by someone to justify either bad art or plagiarism of an other artist works in their own portfolio?
I've been told by someone to justify either bad art. Oh, okay. So like, what's the worst like defense mechanism I've heard from an artist? Um. Oh, okay. So someone that was doing kind of a style that wasn't exactly realism. It definitely had some characteristics of like exaggeration, but even with that, their anatomy and their proportions were very off, like very off. But when I confronted them with this, um, I remember they specifically told me I wasn't understanding it because it was stylized and it was their style, and that's why it
That's what I was
was
gonna say
looking
too.
what
I was gonna say that too.
stylized.
It's always that. It's but that's my style.
Yeah, like that's not an excuse for a poor understanding of. Ooh, and that it's a fine line because some of it, like I do question. I don't know. I would just say be very careful when you say it's stylized. Because in my mind, that just means you don't have a better understanding of anatomy.
It's
And
like I was gonna say, like, do you call someone out on that? And be like their hand is like just 5 sausages, and you're just like, draw me all the bone structures in the hands if you know what it means. Like, would you ever do that?
no, like I don't even know if I could do that off the top of my head. But like I do understand when people are going for something that's not realism, but I think having that as an excuse is very poor. The best thing you can do when someone's giving you critique is just kind of take it, nod, understand what they're trying to tell you, and not get defensive.
Yeah, I think it was Anthony Jones said, for if everyone gives you their 2 cents, you'd be a millionaire, right?
Yeah.
It's like, because like everyone has their own 2 cents about new stuff, right? So if you were to just take that information, at the end of the day, you'd be rich.
I don't know if I agree with that. It's like I would want someone that I feel has a proper understanding to give me a critique. Like I wouldn't go to my mom and get her 2 cents. I would never do that.
Yeah, I think you can always tell as well, because when it's someone's style and it's really, they know their stuff, no one says that. They don't need to say it's my style. It's more when it's not developed yet. So I had this thing when I was working on developing my style, and I had like really, the face was really angular, but the body was pretty much realistic. And then I had to take what they're saying when they say it doesn't work. You need to fix the face, and the way I saw it is, it's not, because I was happy with the face. So it's like, okay, so something about this is not working. What is it that's not working? Instead of like lashing out and being like, oh, it's my style. It's like they're saying this for a reason. Everything that anyone says, any critique, I try and find the grain of truth in it. And to me, the grain of truth was like, well, something's not working. It's either the face or the body. If you're happy with the face, then the body's not working. So you gotta fix that. You gotta work on that.
Isn't it like active problem solving, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's probably the best advice I hope everyone can really resonate with.
Any advice on how to draw / paint clothing convincingly? I always struggle with capturing different materials and getting the folds to look natural and convincing.
Um, to me, I would say like pay attention to how thick a fabric is, because that's the first thing is the thickness. Like you look at leather and how it folds, and the folds are going to bunch up in a certain way. Compared to like silk, the creases are going to be more severe than like a leather. So pay attention to the material, and then pay attention to how light works and reflects on it. So to this, I would say do studies, like look at satin, look at velvet, look at leather, look at cloth, look at how these things work. Like with cloth, for instance, you're not going to get super bright highlights, like unless it's a white cloth, but you're not going to get a lot of difference between the highlight and the shadow, and the midtone. It's going to be more even, whereas silk, you're going to have much more difference between the highlight, midtone, shadow, reflected light. Like look at those four things: highlight, shadow, midtone, reflected light, with different textures and how they each would work in the same environment. If you have clothes, just put them all in the same light and look at it. Like your eyes will tell you a lot how a fabric works.
I know I can't find it right now. My internet's being weird, but Concept Cookie has its own cloth and fabric tutorial that, if this is something that interests you, you should check out, because it definitely focuses on like the difference of. Let me see if I can pull up a new. When I think of fabric, there's three that I think of. It's either like tight, or it's relaxed, or it's hanging. And if you can, or clumped, I'm sorry, relaxed and hanging are the same thing. So like if this was a strand of cloth here, and like these were the two right there and there, those were like the nails holding up the fabric or whatever. So these lines would be like your stress lines, and those would be really tight, and it would be, the values would be very like dark light, just because of the way the fabric's pulled. And then when it becomes more relaxed, it doesn't go like perfectly just like a U. There's lines that will just curve out, and then those will be a little softer. And then when it hits the floor, these are crumpled wrinkles, and those will tend to be scrunched, and you kind of have to think about the material you're working with and how thick it is, how heavy it is, and that's how you can kind of apply it. But think of those lines when you're working with anything. So jeans, when it's at the knee or it's near the feet, it'll be crunched or crumpled lines. And when you're working with like a gown or something, you'll have a lot of drapery and relaxed mixed with tight lines.
That's really good advice.
Tim, can you tell us more about swordplay?
Yeah. So that's something that I'm currently working on. I'm sure some of you might be sick of me saying that, but I'm trying. Like I just showed you earlier, that was my character. Here, I can pull her up again. That was my character, Red, and I have pretty much what swordplay is. For those of you who don't know, it's just my story that I'm developing with my author from back home, and it will be an illustrated novel that I'll kind of release in sections. So the first section will be like a backstory one. So I'll have 10 illustrations with each of the 10 characters, and I'm hoping to get that done this year. Like that'll be my goal for 2015.
That's cool.
Thank you. Oh shoot! You know what my villain's starting to look like? Crimson Viper from Street Fighter.
Yeah, I was just about to say.
Shoot!
Hairstyle.
I mean, I could cut off the braid, make her like, is that too? I don't know about that.
Oh, she kind of looks like Corona.
Oh yeah. It kind of looks like an apple on the top, or like a mushroom. You know what? I don't care. I like the braid.
We might just skip this question. Hey Tim and Sycra, I was wondering if you knew this channel FZD School. He does concept art and teaches concept art in Singapore. In his videos, he says once you know the fundamentals, you can paint and draw anything. What is your opinion on this? Thanks.
Well, yeah, FZD, or is that out? Yeah, that's Feng Zhu. And he had a few tutorials that I absolutely adore and love. The ones about visual libraries and what it means to build them up throughout your life, I think is a great tutorial. There's a lot. I think he kind of changed and shift focus into the school. So he does a lot of like quick paintings and studies. But I do agree on some level, if you understand the basics, you are able to paint anything. But I think guess what would be my... I think you can draw anything, but you still need that personal attachment to what you're drawing to really create something that is more of your own specific style. So yeah, you can learn to draw anything, but if you don't have your personal touch on it, there's nothing that will separate you from the next person that can draw anything.
I kind of disagree with the Feng Zhu thing, what he said. I don't think you can draw anything. I think you could draw anything, but there's a lot more to it than that. And all I would say is this: whoever's giving advice, look at their work, and they're very good at what they do, and that's what they know. So what Feng Zhu does is concept art, and it's really, really good. But I don't know how well he would do in like manga, or something that's really got a lot more style in it. Same with an animation person who does only animation. They're really gestural, but then you ask them to do like a painting of really realistic stuff. You'll get a lot of like conflicting views. So everyone has a point to what they're saying, but I kind of think, like with Feng Zhu, because I've heard this parroted to me a lot, like, oh, I just need to study foundations and I'll learn everything. It's like, they're foundations. You build a house with a foundation, right? So you got the ground laid down, you put the walls up, and you got a roof and everything. It's like, okay, your foundations are in place. Does that mean the house is done? No. Now you build on that. So
I fully agree. I always tell people that same comparison too.
Yeah, strong foundations are important, but at the end of the day, it's like, you know, a house needs more to it than just a roof and four walls, right? 'Cause that's
yeah, but without the foundation, of course, it's going to fall over. So there's truth in what he's saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I was told in college, which was really funny, is you might be really good at polishing your work, which might be like the final editing, but if your foundation, if it's crap, then you just have a shiny turd in the end result.
Polishing a turd. Yeah.
the I think it was one of your videos, Sycra, that you had up a while ago that was you talked about uh, Kiss and keep it simple, stupid, and it's like it's not like that. Like there are times when it's just not that way,
Yeah.
and I actually really enjoyed that one.
Yeah, and whenever anyone says anything like with a lot of strength, like this is a rule, I've tended to find that the exact opposite is usually true as well. It's weird. It's kind of like that thing where, it gets so cold that it burns. Like things can get so in one direction that they actually behave like the polar opposite, and it's the same with like even with governments. You look at like communist, and you look at like fascist Nazis, and they're kind of the same in a lot of ways. And it's like anytime you take two things to the extreme. So if Feng Zhu says like foundation's important and that's the only thing, and I would never say this, but if I said, "Oh, style is it's the only thing is to focus on your style and your personal voice," I would say both are wrong equally. You need both.
Mm-hmm.
It's the yin and yang. You need the balance.
Yeah.
Hi guys, I'm a hobby artist without much free time, with approximately 2 to 4 hours a day to draw, which varies from day to day without drawing to spend an entire weekend. I like to make some progress more effectively, but I need to have a good plan. Do you have any suggestions?
If you're doing 2 to 4 hours of concentrated work, it's enough. I think it's enough. The thing is, you could spend 2 to 4 hours learning very little by just like doing noodling or whatever, or you could really focus. Because when I focus, I would say 2.5 hours to 3 hours in the day is my limit of really intense work. Whereas like if I'm rendering or painting or picking color combinations, I could do that for 8 hours, 9 hours, 10 hours. I'm not learning anything. It's not hard. What's hard is when you're really trying to study. But if you devoted that time that you have to pure study, I think you'd be fine.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
I feel like when it comes to like effectively, usually I feel like the most effective times that I'm studying are the times when my brain just like explodes from like understanding something. You know,
Yeah.
like when you look at like when I finally understood how reflections work and that like you have to like look at the object and whatever's the reflection light of like bounce light and that's what's going to cause the highlight. That blew my mind and I was like, yes, and I finally understood it. I feel like those are like when you're doing things effectively, you know?
Mhm.
Kennedy says, I wanted to say thanks to Sycra for inspiring me to draw every day. Now I really enjoy drawing and watch how much I improve just by drawing so much. And in, inten- I also started attending animation school and I really enjoy it. So thanks, Sycra.
Wow. Um, well,
Good response.
yeah. Thank you. That's cool.
Dante asks, any tips for doing convincing rim lighting? I've tried including it in my work recently and it just ends up looking like I haven't painted the whole character.
Make sure you're doing it effectively. I think I've seen too many artists use rim lights as like a crutch to further push the values in their piece, and I actually think it takes away. So if you feel like you're kind of in that boat, I would try doing it more minimally, and really make sure that the placement of your rim light makes sense and it feels accurate from the shapes and forms that you have going on.
Is Cycler quite bashful? Question mark.
Right. Right.
Squirrely Todd asks, where do you get ideas and inspirations from?
Hmm.
You go first on that.
Uh, well, right now I'm just experimenting, so it's more like a question pops up, like, what if I do this? And then that's it. It just needs to be a question, or it's something that I'm weak on. Um, like I was recently told, oh, like your figures aren't really grounded properly, and you should look at the feet positions. Like, oh, okay, I need to work on this. So then it's like I'm inspired to do that.
Mm-hmm. Actually, I'm gonna go grab the thing that inspired me 2 days ago. Hold on.
How are you?
Oh, jeez. Hold on, I need to close that door.
About done? 30 minutes. Sorry about that. All right. Let me quickly. So I'm the person that feels you can be inspired by anything, even things that don't seem like they're inspiring. So if you see on my screen, I found this in the office when we were cleaning, and it was a leaf. But I found it so inspiring. This curve, I find things that are organic very inspiring, and I like looking at like the shadows and the way that it kind of contorts on itself. I love that. So the other night, last night, I started kind of sketching it out. I don't know how well you can see that, but it'll become something. I kind of see it like as an earth beast. It was like a very sad earth beast because the leaf looked like it was kind of conforming on itself, and it's like it's old age, it's dying, and it's like accepting that. I can find inspiration in like the weirdest things, but I think you just have to open your eyes to what's around you, because sometimes you'll be surprised by what you might be inspired by.
That's so poetic.
That was so strange. I like ran through the main part of the hallway, and everyone's like, "Is everything okay?" It's like, "Yeah, don't worry, sorry guys."
Andrea asks, I often catch myself procrastinating on a piece, spending an hour doing small details with no purpose. how do I kick myself in the butt so I can start working more efficiently?
You go.
I wonder what you're afraid of, and I think that's what you have to get to. Because sometimes there's this thing of not doing something because you're afraid of failing. Well, for me, that's usually been the case. And the other thing, well, okay, so to that, I find hands and feet still difficult to draw, even though I've drawn a bunch of them. So when I draw figures, especially when I draw like gestures, I tend to like I'll draw the figure and I haven't drawn the hands or the feet, and it's like, okay, move on to the next one, and then I catch myself and it's like, no, add hands and feet. No, but what if I ruin the pose? It looks pretty good. Like, do it. So it's this understanding of whatever you're weakest at, the only way it's going to get better is if you actually focus on your weaknesses. And if you're just chasing that, like you always take what you're weak at and fix it, you will naturally get stronger, and you also get this confidence that it's like, whatever I'm bad at, I'm going to be able to work on it. So the fear thing has got to, you got to face it, you got to confront it and realize, well, if that is why you're procrastinating, otherwise you got to figure out why you're procrastinating. And sometimes it's that you don't even want to be doing what you're doing, just not. You'll convince yourself like, yeah, I want to do this, but it's like, do you really want to do this, or is this what you've been told you want to do, or what you think you should do?
Mm-hmm.
Where's your motivation coming from?
I think that's great advice with the confidence thing, because there's too many artists that I see never work on their weaknesses, and in every single piece it's very like prevalent on what they're not good at, and that they're not trying to improve on it either. It's like, were you ever the person that like hid hands in their pieces?
When I was younger, yes, all the time, I think.
I used to do that all the time, or it would be like hands in pockets or hands behind the back. Like you would make excuses for it, you know.
I think the artist who did Hellboy is Mike Mignola, right? He does that with hands or feet. He puts them into shadows because he can't draw them. I mean, so it works. It works in a way, but I don't think it's the best strategy is to.
Just tackle it head on.
Yeah, because you're gonna get better at it. Like, the more you do it, it's just impossible not to get better at it.
What was the other part? Small details. Oh, stay zoomed out. I definitely can understand where you're coming from, where you feel like you've worked for an hour and then you zoom out and you can barely tell a difference. Or the worst is when you show it to someone and they can't even tell that you did anything to it. And usually it's because you're zoomed in and you're not actually making much progress on it.
I gotta zoom out.
I was gonna say was something about like you guys were talking about earlier was like priorities, and how as far as like procrastination goes, like I feel like if you feel that you're procrastinating, like you're like, oh, I'm gonna go play this new game that came out, and then you spend like the next 3 hours playing that game, and then you're like, oh, well, I should have probably been drawing. That's definitely a priorities thing, you know, and making sure that you guys, as an artist, you should be prioritizing your skill, your trade, your craft, so that way, because that's what's going to be making you money, you know.
And it's the other thing is like, why don't you make the reward after? Like,
yes,
yeah.
I'm gonna do this, and then I'm gonna do this thing that is fun. And what I've started to realize is I tried playing games more lately because I haven't in many years, and it's like it starts to feel like art is more fun in a lot of ways. It's like,
I totally agree with you. So note for all artists, you can't play video games anymore.
I'm starting to hit that. Like, I think the last game I started playing was Dragon Age Inquisition, and I played maybe the first like hour of it, and then I haven't touched it since.
it's cool though, but it takes a long time to. It took me a long time to get to that point. Before I treated video games, like I never have played an MMORPG because I know like my personality type is really addictive. I would not be able to get up from one. So I've.
Sycra again.
Sorry.
I said we would probably never see you again. You just disappeared in Warcraft.
No more videos. There wasn't there a guy named Sycra who used to upload videos?
And we lost him to the world of Warcraft.
Yeah, something like that.
Actually, Sycra, I have a question for you. What's your favorite game?
Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like old school '90s, late '90s RPGs like um, Final Fantasy VI, Illusion of Gaia, Chrono Trigger, Xenogears, Final Fantasy VII. I like the Suikoden series, like those type of games.
But you are totally a 90s RPG guy then.
Yeah, because that's the last time I was playing games. Like people was like, oh, blah blah, Call of Duty. What? Call of Duty?
What?
Oh, what now? League of who?
Oh god, that's the one game I admittedly can say grabbed my addiction for. Still has to some extent. Although I haven't played in like
I was like,
3 weeks.
I haven't heard you talk about that game in a while.
Yeah, I've been good. Been focused. Been driven.
I only know about it. No, not only know about it because it's kind of pop culture, but I know about it because people will say your character looks like this character from League, and I'm like, from what? Okay, and then I look it up, and I'm like, yeah, I guess so. But
Yeah, all right, I can see it.
yeah,
Your character looks like Jinx.
yeah,
It's like any character that you draw that doesn't have ginormous breasts or like wide hips, you know, has blue hair. It's Jinx.
Jinx is my favorite character design of all last year. Oh, it's Katie DeSalsa. I have so much respect for her on that one.
Andy says, hey, you're saying we should draw every day to improve our skills as an artist. Do you think it's better to do a lot of quick sketches or one render drawing? Or maybe it's more important to spend all that time on studies?
I think that's you.
I don't know, man. I mean, whoever, maybe not mad, but because I am staying like okay. So I started doing this thing with drawing because I prefer drawing to painting. So if I was gonna paint, I would paint. If I want to get better at drawing, I'll draw more. If I want to get better at drawing from imagination, which is what I want to do, I'm drawing from imagination more. So figure out what you want to do. If you want to be the type of person who really understands, you want to do painting and you want to make sure they fit in reality, I would say, yeah, do the studies of learn how light works. I know, Tim, you do really good tutorials on making it understandable, how light works, how things like physics, optics, or whatever it's called. I don't know. But that thing, learn that thing. Make your paintings look like things. It's all about where you want to go and what skills are necessary to get there.
Mm-hmm. And I think there's a speed that you can go at where if you're drawing kind of the same thing over and over, you're recycling your own skill level that you're already at. So I don't know, I think you'll go a lot slower in progressing as an artist, but if you try new things or things that you've never tried before, like I sometimes fall into that category where I feel like I am very repetitious with like I'm very known for doing like side views or side profiles, and then I'll draw horns a lot in my traditional works, or like feathers, like it's a comfort zone. But if I went out and did something new, like an electrical socket or a light bulb working, or innards, like that might be something that's really interesting, but I've never done before, and that might push me outside my comfort zone. So I think you have to push yourself a little outside your comfort zone, but as long as you're drawing every day, like that's really what matters most.
The Monster Penguin. Finally, I am able to watch one of these live. One thing I noticed with my digital art is that the brushstrokes just seem so chaotic and bad. Do you have any tips on how to make brushwork look and flow better?
This goes to a painter. You're gonna have to answer this, Tim.
What? You came from a traditional painting background.
Yeah, but I don't paint anymore.
Well, let's see. So one thing that just seems so chaotic and bad. Okay, so I think then maybe you have a question about blending. Where like right now I'm using a chalk brush. I have learned how to like work with it. So it wasn't just like right away I opened up the brush and I like knew exactly how to work with it. Like I noticed like if I press really lightly, I'll get some of that textured look, but if I press hard enough, I can get rid of all of the little textured stuff about it in the inner workings of it. So you have to learn to work with the brush and you grow with the brush. So I know how hard to push down on the tablet. I know what kind of result I'll get. So having that understanding of the tool almost is just as important as it is finding what tool works best for you specifically. And also what you're comfortable with. Like I think I use the chalk brush a lot nowadays because it almost forces me not to focus on my OCD of over blending everything, where I'm allowing myself to let there be brush strokes and let the texture be seen because that's how the brush works. Where if I was using a soft or a, I guess either soft or hard edge circle brush, I'd be so concentrated on how smooth everything looks and if it looks completely blended. So you kind of have to figure out what kind of an artist you are too and work with that.
I've got a question for Sycra on what he's currently working on. The way that your villainess is coming along. Now, did you lay out the composition like that, or did you just grow it organically?
I think I grew it organically. I think I started out closer up, and then I just scaled it. And it's more, I guess if I was to describe it, it's about thinking about the space. Like, okay, so you have like a page, right? This would be a bad way to go about doing it, in my opinion. Like just unless I mean certain characters, but this is generally, it's kind of boring. If you have your character, by comparison, this is already much better. It's more interesting. Well, no, hold on. Maybe this would be better. So, or this, yeah, there you go. Now it's better. So it's like thinking about the negative space. So this part is all negative space. Let me color it green. This is all the negative space, right? And then the darker thing is the positive space. You want it so there's more negative or more positive, but it's easier with a landscape. So let's say I was doing a landscape, right? So this would be a cool composition if it's all this positive space with a little negative space, and this would be a cool composition if it's all this negative space, and then you've got a bit of positive space. What's the most boring composition is when you have like an even split 50-50. And so I just stay away from those. I stay away from even splits. I stay away from things in the middle of the page. I'd rather favor one side or another. I like to have things where my characters' heads are sort of cut off, so it feels like you just caught them in action. Like, oh, something was happening. This isn't like something that someone planned and set up. It's more like, see how her hair's cut off? Her elbows cut off. It's more like you came upon this person in action. They're doing something, and this is kind of staged because she's just standing there, so whatever. So maybe it's not the best example, but an idea of it looking a bit spontaneous as opposed to too planned out, I guess. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, I know that answered my question. I think it's the guys that did like The Incredibles and Monsters Inc. and stuff. They use that same theory, right?
I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's them. Yeah, do you have a tutorial that's like more main focused on that on your page?
Mine or Tim's?
On yours.
I have a series on composition. Yeah. I don't remember what it was called.
Well, if that interests viewers out there, go check it out.
The unnamed series by Sycra.
Something about composition. There's a playlist, and it's got something to do with composition in it. I'm really embarrassed right now, but I'm sure Concept Cookie has better tutorials anyway.
No, Sycra, come on. No down talking.
Like, I'm pretty sure you were like the first tutorials that I've ever watched on YouTube.
Well,
you're like a legend on YouTube.
God.
like
Shut up.
Make it more uncomfortable, hurry.
Sorry, I just want to be like the lightning, like gesture drawing was like that blew my mind.
All right. Well,
Anyway,
yeah. How long does this last? Is this like a?
Oh, sorry. No, we have like 5 minutes because we started just a little late. Oh my gosh, it's 3:30 already. Oh wow. Okay. Yeah. So we are almost done. Joe, maybe if you could find like 2 more questions and we'll end off on that.
okay. I need to try to find a silly one and a serious one.
Yeah, get a silly one first.
A silly one first?
Or I got serious one first. And then I want to. Sycra, what is your favorite color?
I don't have one anymore. I just have color combinations.
All right, better question. What's your go-to color that you always find yourself turning to when you're doing your pieces?
I think purples. Like,
Purples?
purples with orange. Again, it's like color combinations. Purples and oranges work really well.
Hmm. I can probably see that.
There's no like silly questions. Anyway, someone says, or Jason says, I find it difficult to draw subjects from multiple angles. Is there something that you had to work hard at? If so, do you have any tips?
I think draw subjects from multiple angles. Like do it. It's very hard. I found it really difficult when I was starting out, but I think you get better just by doing it and understanding form. But that's I don't think we can cover that in 3 minutes.
Yeah. No, I agree that that's one of the more difficult ones because, especially as character artists, I find that we tend to draw in like specific poses and we repeat that over and over. Maybe it's just something I noticed with myself where it's always like 3/4 pose, or with a profile it's either straight on, side view, or 3/4, and I don't really stray from those angles. So then being forced out of that comfort zone I think is a good thing, but you really have to look at like your subject matter, understand how it's working.
Alright, I can't really find a silly one, so I'm just gonna ask, uh, what's your guys' favorite anime?
That's good.
Um, growing up, I really liked. Well, not growing up, but maybe 15 years ago, 12 years ago, I liked Samurai X. It's like an OVA, 4
Yeah.
episodes.
I heard of that one.
It's the Rurouni Kenshin.
Yeah.
It's the movie before the TV series. So the TV series is really lighthearted and yay, kitty stuff, kid show. But it was super dark and mature. The starting thing, and I really liked it.
I might have to check that one out then. And I guess my favorite anime would be Kino's Journey. That was one that really stuck with me. So yeah, okay. So then we'll end it off then. Okay, I know you guys had a lot of questions, so thank you guys. And it looks like you had really detailed questions, which is also really great. I'm doing a quick scroll through the comments. So thank you guys. Oh, this is kind of funny. Wow, there's a lot. Thank you guys. So yeah, this was our female villain kind of piece today. Sycra, you want to show yours off? And
Yeah, sure.
there's Sycra's. Do you have any kind of story behind this one, or is this really just like a free form? Go for it.
There's only one thing I wanted to put in, which was, have you guys seen eyeball tattoos?
Yes.
They fill the sclera, the white of the eye, with black, and it looks really evil.
I cannot believe people actually get that done.
How will they ever get hired again? That's what I want to know. But yeah, it looks really scary, and so I just wanted to make sure I gave her a black eyeball tattoo, because it's like when I look at them, it's instant villain. They all look so evil.
Yeah. Oh, I really like the necklace you did.
Oh, thanks.
It reminds me of like a female form without the bottom half of the legs and the arms, but it has like a gelatinous look to it in the material.
I know, because I was eating gummies.
Oh, were you really?
Yeah, and Okay, gummies.
Me and Joe were just talking about that because I have this gummy bear step-by-step that people really like, but I'm like, but how often do people really use that in their work? And then there you go, today. I just answered my own question. Wow, that's funny. I guess really quick, so then this was my female villain. I kind of saw her in like the Eat Sheep world, if it had like an underground level, and she would be like this in control of lava, and I really wanted Pink's to be like the lava, and she would kind of match that. But I definitely went for very angular and very shapular. I think this one I might work on further, and maybe I'll post it up. But yeah, I had fun with this one. So thanks again, Sycra, for coming to this live stream. It's always really fun talking to you and getting some insight from another tutorial.
It was fun.
Well, it's great. Also, like I get to talk to you like I feel like every 4 months on these streams, and I always look at like how much you've progressed since the last time I talked to you. And this time, I was just really impressed with like 3 of the different character pieces I've seen from you. Where I'm like, well, like I said earlier, it's like I can see a story behind these. So that's why I'm so curious if you are planning anything with these.
Not yet, but many years down the road, sure.
Okay. Well, I'll keep looking forward to it. And thank you guys for coming to this live stream. We do these every Wednesday at 2 p.m. and that's Central Time, and -5 GMT if you're from around the world. And really quick, I know some of you were asking about this last week, but I did indeed get my first sketchbook art book done, and it is on Kickstarter right now. So if you want to go find it, you just type in Vaughn under the search or whatever, and I can ship it anywhere in the world. So this has been a fun project for me to work on, and I can't wait for you guys to see it in person. Alright, so yeah, we will be here next week with, I believe, McLean Kendry at the same time, and we will be doing either, I think it's a hero, or
It's a
male hero. So we're going to do the 4, it's either going to be male hero, male villain, or female hero, and today, since we did female villain, you can kind of see what we're aiming for. So thanks guys again for coming, and hopefully we'll see you next week. Alright, bye guys.
Bye.
Bye.